Good mythical afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Ayala with a vlog for you today. Today we're going to be looking at Life Under Slavery, a Mr. Ayala presentation. Please make sure that you're writing notes. And at the end of this vlog, there is a question to put down in the doobly-doo, which I think it's over there this time. Whatever. So anyway, please sit back, relax, and write your notes because understand, it's not only the notes that you need the conversation to be able to understand what you're actually writing. So that's the second most important part. So if you need to review this as many times as you need to, and please make sure you put it down in your discussion question down in the doobly-doo so I can give you your points that you need. So this is Life Under Slavery. So the things that we need to ponder, things we need to make sure we understand is 1, what was life like as a slave? 2, why is Nat Turner so important? And 3, how did slave owners actually defend the use of slavery? Which shall be interesting. So, life under slavery. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about after 1830, it becomes extreme hot topic. And no, we're not talking about that store of gothic stuff. So anyway, when we're talking about slavery, there's two major types. The first one is rural slavery. Those who live on plantations and in the farms. Down in the agricultural areas. So these men, women, and children work from dawn to dusk, all day and almost all night. And most of these slaves lived on these large plantations, and they were controlled by a person called an overseer, who most of the time it was actually another African slave, but it was one who had more power over the other ones because they wanted to split that community. Well, urban slavery was a little bit different. Because of the cotton gin, the wealth of cotton lured all these white laborers away from these factories, carpenters, blacksmithing, and they wanted to become plantation owners and have those cash crops like everyone else. So these skilled workers became very high in demand. And so what happened is these African slaves with these skills could work in these urban environments and actually have more freedom than those in rural areas. But they still had no political rights. So even though they're skilled laborers, they had no right to anything under the law. So what happens is Nat Turner, who's a slave from Virginia, states that he was chosen by God to free people from bondage. That sounds very familiar probably to quite a few of you. And in August of 1831, there was a lunar eclipse, and Nat Turner decided, hey, this is a perfect time to a rebellion. God is telling me, let's do this. So he leads a rebellion of about 80 followers, and they're attacked near these plantations. And so about 60 white people are killed during this. But this ultimately fails because the army is brought out, crushes the rebellion. Nat Turner actually escapes, hides in the swamps until he is found by a farmer and then executed. Yeah, unfortunately, this just really freaks out the Southerners. Because the Southerners are like, oh no, if they actually understand that there's more slaves than slaveholders, they actually might rebel. So they started to debate, I should say, how to control their slaves. Some wanted to get rid of slavery altogether, emancipate them. And in Virginia, it was mostly the poor farmers in the western areas, the areas that would become West Virginia, that wanted to get rid of these slaves. But the land holding class on the eastern coast was too powerful, so it ends up failing in the legislature. And then other slave states like Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and even the territory of Florida start to institute these things called slave codes, or laws that are to restrict slaves' movement. One of the weirdest ones that I found on the books was that if there was a white woman walking on the sidewalk and an African slave male walking on the other side, the same sidewalk, the African slave has to step off the sidewalk, turn his back, and avert his eyes. Yeah, that's kind of weird, but that's such as slave codes. There's a lot of these pro-slavery defenses that the Southerners used at the time to say, hey, this is why we need slavery. I don't agree with any of these, but we still need to know why and what their debates were, because if we can understand the people we're debating against and why they believe certain things, it's much easier for us to be able to debate back and for them to understand where we're coming from. So that's why it's so important to understand why the Southerners wanted slavery. Well, one, they cite the Bible. And they cite these passages that state the servants must obey their masters. They also say that slavery benefits the Africans by making them civilized and turning them into Christians. Well, that's definitely Eurocentrism, if you've ever seen any. They also started to make this myth of the happy slave, like all the slaves are happy being there. And they did start comparing them to the horrible conditions in northern factories, saying, hey, at the very least, the slaves at least have food in the house. You know, in a factory, if someone loses a finger, they just fire you and you're on the streets again. So they did use that. And they also used the gag rule in Congress. And what that stated was that a gag rule is just stopping someone from speaking about something. And this gag rule in Congress said more or less you can't discuss slavery at all in Congress, which upset quite a few people. So that's in the vlog. Hopefully it wasn't that bad of a deal. At least I hope not. So here's what you need to put in your discussion for this week. So you need to choose one of the pro-slavery arguments and use your knowledge and any sources you find and debate why that idea is incorrect. Quote people, do discussions. And remember, the more detailed the better, and the more diverse our opinions and ideas, the better it looks. Because that's the deal. We want to look super awesome and show everyone why we're the best, and everyone else can, go away. Anyway, please make sure to review this as many times as you need. Make sure you put the vlog question before the due date. And as always, don't forget to be awesome.